Mortal Kombat needs no introduction. Beginning in 1992, this was a game series that helped lead to the creation of the American ESRB rating system due to the at the time shocking violence and the ability to finish your opponents with a fatality. Midway went on to make 3 of these 2D fighters, making use of the state-of-the-art digitizing technology. That was where they would tape live-action actors in front of a blue screen and turn them into sprites that would be used in the game. But the game industry was rapidly evolving throughout the 90s. Two-dimensional sprite-based video games were believed to be antiquated and behind the times, made even worse by the advent of 3D polygonal graphics. And if you don't believe me, just look at the hammering Street Fighter 3's first iteration got when it released. People were able to look at the beautiful sprites and pixel art and believed it to be outdated when compared to the likes of Tekken or Soul Blade, which is even more upsetting because Second Impact is my favourite fighting game of all time. So Midway obviously followed suit, and Mortal Kombat made the jump from 2D to 3D in 1997's Mortal Kombat 4. The game still played like a 2D fighter, aside from the ability to sidestep during a match. A couple new gameplay staples were implemented here that would go on to become recurring mechanics throughout the next handful of games. Fighters can pull out weapons, and stages can be interacted with during a round, often being as simple as picking up a boulder and hurling it at your opponent. As I said before, Mortal Kombat 4 still remained in the 2D plane during fights. Sidestepping didn't lead to a huge shift in how the game was played. The meta was very similar to Mortal Kombat 3's. Mortal Kombat 4 is a game deserving of its own video, but I want to talk about the Dreamcast port that I don't own. Oh well, one day.
Round 1. Fight!
The biggest paradigm shift came with the 5th game, 2002's Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. This is a fully 3-dimensional fighter. Sidestepping is no longer exiled to a couple of buttons, but is a key part of the movement as a whole, much more in line with games like Soul Calibur. Lots of new fighters introduced here, some great, most terrible. Looking at you, Su Hao, the characters are given 2 hand-to-hand fighting styles and their own weapon, a similar mechanic to MK4's but vastly improved. This game plays very differently to those that preceded it. I quite like Deadly Alliance. It moves the franchise in a somewhat fresh direction. The soundtrack is incredible here, and I like the stages, though the fatalities aren't anything special, and this is the first and only Mortal Kombat to feature 0 stage fatalities. Coming a couple years later in 2004, Mortal Kombat Deception adds to the sandbox Deadly Alliance created. Great new stages like the Slaughterhouse and the ability to punch your opponents into different sections like you can in MK3, plus a few returning stages from MK1 and 2. Deception also saw the return of some of my personal favourite characters such as Cabal, Ermac, Baraka and Melina, but not even they can save what's got to be an even worse roster than Deadly Alliance's, with appalling new characters such as Shujinko, Dairu, and Cobra. The game isn't a huge step up from the prior one. I'm unsure whether I prefer it or not. Many fans praised the new single-player campaign, Conquest Mode, which is just a glorified several-hour-long series of tutorials. And that brings us to the game I'm here to talk about today, Mortal Kombat Armageddon.
There have been many powerful warriors throughout the millennia. But ages of mortal combat have begun to tear the fabric of the realms. The critical point has finally been reached.
Throughout the 2000s, Midway was facing financial troubles, leading to Armageddon, which I'll be referring to as MKA throughout the video because Armageddon is a big word and I am stupid. Being marketed as the final game due to it being public knowledge that Midway was most likely going under, which it did in 2009. MKA released in October 2006 for the PS2 worldwide and the Xbox exclusively in North America, meaning I can't complete my collection for the console. It also received a port to the Nintendo Wii in May of 2007. This is my favourite version of the game, not because of the dodgy motion controls that can be rectified with the use of a GameCube controller, but for the fact it's the most polished and feature-complete version of the game available. MKA is essentially an expanded version of Deception. The developers weren't able to do anything too crazy or new because the game was a celebration of the franchise. Every single character is playable here. That's over 60 fighters. And too many fighters means that many lack polish, especially Motaro and the super boss characters. Like seriously, Motaro's entire deal was that he was a centaur. Now what is he? A San? A Tar? The super boss characters are combatants like Blaze, Moloch, or Onaga. They're hilariously OP and were banned from any professional tournaments. The main problem is that they're dull to play as and make the game kinda boring. I could have lived without their inclusion in the playable roster, just have them as bosses at the end of a tower. Having every fighter is a great idea in concept, but it is obvious that the developers were punching above their weight with a game of this scope, being created in such a limited time frame. It does have decent graphics, especially for a PS2 title, although a lot of characters do kinda look like Star Wars Power of the Force action figures with those comically buffed chests and arms. It does have my favourite design of reptile ever, alongside the reuse of Sub-Zero and Scorpion's alternate costumes from Deadly Alliance and Deception, which I really love too. The loading screens between matches in the arcade ladder are great, the two opponents facing each other down in the foreground, the upcoming stage displayed in the background. Odd that none of the other 3D games thought to do this before this entry. I enjoyed the stages too, the numerous gimmicks make them fairly unique in the realm of fighting games, though there could be at times a lack of stage variety, something that is somewhat rectified in the Wii port. But enough talk of fancy graphics and swanky presentation, let's get into the meat and bones of Mortal Kombat. The gameplay and mechanics. MKA plays almost identically to Deception, if a little simplified. Combatants now only have one hand-to-hand fighting style, as opposed to two. They do, however, retain their weapons. A lot was done to simplify the game due to how monolithic that roster is. Fatalities are gone, and are replaced by the infamous creative fatality system, where the player will press a series of inputs which are the same for every character. The results vary from all forms of dismemberment. It isn't great. None of the fatalities of increasing brutality based on how many inputs you make are all that interesting. They're not especially gory or funny, just bog standard. I understand that making an individual fatality for 60 plus characters would be nigh impossible or too time consuming, so creative fatality is better than nothing. MKA also introduces air combos, which is essentially sending your enemy into the air and pulling off a string of combos before they plummet back to the ground. There's also the return of Conquest mode, which has become a bit more of a traditional single-player action-adventure game compared to prior iterations. I can't speak too much about it because I've never spent more than 5 minutes with it. Unlike in Deception, it isn't required playing to unlock all of the hidden characters, and I don't give a flying cheesecake about the story and lore. There's also Mortal Kombat, which is surprisingly average, and I mean that as a compliment. I expected it to suck. Perhaps the best new addition to the Mortal Kombat series is MKA's Creative Fighter. Similar to Soul Calibur's character creator, perhaps even better than the one found in Soul Calibur 3, here you can make pretty much anyone and anything you want, giving them moves from a library of other fighters. You can make some of the most broken characters you want, which makes collecting coins for the crypt a walk in the park. Custom fighters were obviously banned from professional competitive play. MKA grants the player a great deal of freedom. You can play as anyone you want, you don't have to play modes if you're not interested. I like this approach. It places your enjoyment above all else. Mortal Kombat Armageddon is a jack of all trades, master of none, but that is better than a master of one. The game is just fun. It's a comfort game of mine. I'd risk saying it is the most fun I've ever had in a Mortal Kombat game. It may not be the best in the franchise, but it has a lot to do within it. People most definitely got their money's worth in 2006. My favourite characters to use are Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, Jade, Draman, Shao Kahn, and Chameleon. Can you even imagine a game like this that would come out nowadays with this many characters at launch, for there to be zero DLC, for it not not to be a broken mess, simply unthinkable. Mortal Kombat needs to get back to this, take itself less seriously. I think the 3D gameplay should make a comeback. I know the last one to use it was Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe, so I can sort of understand NetherRealm's hesitation to revert back to that style. Yet, compared to the technical richness of something like Street Fighter 6, Mortal Kombat 1 can't even compare. I understand that this is probably a controversial opinion, but I've never viewed Mortal Kombat as a fighting game series. I mean, it doesn't even play well on an arcade stick. And I think the 3D era games understood this. They basically made fun party games that you can get hours of enjoyment out of. And I respect the grind. Armageddon attempts to deliver a massive package and, for the most part, succeeds at it. Concessions were always going to be a part of it, but given the circumstances that this game was made under, I think they probably did the best they could. So, I think that about wraps everything up. I don't think there was anything left to talk about. Oh wait.
Get over here!
Thanks for watching.